Today I had the opportunity to visit an archaeological excavation at Midewin National Tallgrass Prairie. Midewin staff had found items like a shard of pottery and some bison bones, which led them to believe there might have been a small either village or some sort of settlement at this site in Midewin. So Midewin staff reached out to archaeologists at the University of Chicago and Notre Dame to come and do an archaeological dig at Midewin. Basically what we're going to see is archaeologists excavating what are basically garbage pits. So you'll see in the video the soil that comprises these pits, the soil's darker. So basically imagine if you took, food from your table and composted it, that's going to have a higher organic matter and that's going to create like darker soil. So the archaeologists are basically investigating these garbage pits to see what remains, whether it's pottery or charcoal or fish bones or mussel shells. Check it out.
See the wall, but then when you get below that, we get kind of, and you can see here where Zoe is troweling out, there's obviously some kind of pit there. So a trash pit, and it's got trash thrown in it. Now maybe originally it was used for some other purpose, like for storage or to process food. But so we trowel that out and then we sift the dirt from that, and that's what I've been working on the screen over here. We have another pit here. Which doesn't look so nice, but
well, we took a quotation from it.
But you can see into the wall there's some clam shells, like freshwater mussel shells in the bottom.
And you can just see the outline at the top. So we thought we were about halfway with this, but you can actually see it's going much further out based on, so it's going actually, I already took the pictures. It's actually going here, so it's quite large.
Like where the darker dirt is?
Yeah, the darker dirt. So that's the pit.
Right. Okay.
The pit's filled in with the darker dirt, and you can see there's some clam shells near the bottom, like freshwater mussel shells, and then there's a big piece of prehistoric pot. That's those white things.
Oh wow!
These are the shells, and then this is the
prehistoric pottery.
See?
Getting an image.
Yeah.
Totally seeing the image.
Yeah.
And so this we knew this was here because we found it when we were in this unit.
Okay.
So we dug it down. So we know how deep it is, but it is actually bigger than I think we thought it was.
Yeah, it's much bigger.
And like this little area, would this have been, like what would have been around this area?
Well, we're not really sure. Like, you mean at the site?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, we probably had some kind of houses, like wigwams that they lived in.
Okay.
But those were probably up at the original ground surface, and the remnants of those are pretty much vanished. We do find some, like, ends of posts where the posts went down into the earth really deep. And we can see those in outline against the soil, but they're pretty rare. So next to these houses, apparently, they had pits they dug for various purposes, and we're seeing those pits.
What are the pits for?
Trash. Well, we don't know exactly what they were for yet.
Okay.
But I mean, they might have stored stuff in them, or used them for trash pits, or they might have processed like plants and stuff in them, and then filled them back in with garbage. But right now, they're pretty much just filled with garbage.
Okay.
Dirt with garbage. And so that gives a sense about what we're learning is like what kind of foods they were eating.
Okay.
So some various things, like we found some deer bone. We found a lot of fish bone and some turtle shell and these mussel shells. So they're using resources that were probably this whole area here. The creek used to go, and where it's low was probably a big marsh or ponds, and so they're getting stuff out of there. And then they're on the prairie. So, since they're getting fish and stuff like that, they must have been out here in the warm season. Typically, this site would be interpreted as a winter bison hunting camp, where they would camp on the prairie and hunt bison, but this suggests, no, they were not. They were here in the warm season. So it's kind of a different type of what we expected. So that's kind of changed what we think about it.
Okay.
And we're finding it dates to pretty narrowly to in the late prehistoric period, to a time period, a phase we call Huber. And it's pretty much looks like it's just that one time period when people were here. Maybe in the late 1500s, early 1600s? What do you think, Maddie?
Yeah, I would say 1600s.
1600s.
It's just the very beginning.
Beginning of the 1600s. So before, we haven't found any European artifacts, so it's probably before the French came into the area, but it's really late in the prehistory. So it's a very interesting site, very interesting type of site. And so, you wouldn't think about, look at this field, that there'd be so many like prehistoric trash pits in it, right?
Especially this site. I mean, there's so many other things that have happened at this particular, at Midewin. This was a farmstead, this was the arsenal, and before that, it was a late prehistoric, camp.
Yep, like that.
And would this have been like, we have the Kankakee River, we have the Des Plaines. I know like the Forest Preserve will do the rendezvous days. So how would this site, the rivers, have affected any villages that were here or anything like that?
Well, it's probably important that you could travel down Middle Grand Creek and get to the Kankakee and the Des Plaines.
Okay.
Because they was probably moved around through the seasons. So probably having this intimate access then to the major rivers was probably actually critical for them.
Okay.
It's probably one of the main reasons they chose to come here.
Okay.
You guys want it?
Yeah, I see that. Yeah.
Where's
That kind of tannish thing sticking out of the wall? That's a bone of some kind.
Oh, wow.
And the sparkly stuff is the shell.
It's more shell.
So
There's
they
a lot
found
of shell in here.
lots of shell in here. I can show you. We found 2 really big shells.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That came out of this one, and then lots of broken shell.
And would those have come from the creek most likely?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, yes, he is.
I can show you some of the big shells we're finding.
Oh my God.
Just to talk about like really nice preservation at this site. It's just like these really.
So there's so we talked about early 1600s. That'd be a 400-year-old shell. Still in pretty good shape.
Here's another big one.
For certain types of water.
Okay.
So if you could identify what type of clam it was, you could know something about, was the water clean, was the bed sandy, or was it gravelly? You could learn a lot about the local environment from these mussel shells. There used to be a lot of different species of these freshwater clams. They're pretty much, a lot of them have disappeared, but they give a hint on the environment.
What is it?
It's just a giant, like what we call fire-cracked rock from cooking fires.
Wow.
You see this big burn. I don't know why it's in there. They, where maybe had a campfire. You'd have rocks around it.
Okay.
And they threw it in the trash pit when they filled it in for some reason. Then we get like a lot of charcoal. We're getting a lot of charcoal out of here.
Don't you get rid of that, Robert?
Yeah. I keep tripping over this rock. You and your rocks. So we get, this is really nice charcoal. Look at that.
Holy banana.
So we're getting like big pieces of charcoal, which is exciting because we can then get radiocarbon dates on that.
And also, we can also, with those big pieces, you can ID what type of wood it is. So we can say,
Really?
oh, they're burning white oak, for example.
This is definitely oak charcoal. You can see the pores. Don't touch it.
Why can't you touch? You just don't want
It'll-
oil on
Don't-
it?
yeah, I
That's
don't
what
want
the
any oil on it.
radiocarbon date.
But you can see the little rings, like porous rings in there. That's definitely some kind of oak, probably white oak, I think. I don't know. Who knows? You're an expert on that. You're the one.
I'm
You're
the
one.
expert, yeah,
You can tell.
on that.
I think it's wild that like you guys are doing this archaeological dig and like trying to figure out how people lived, and then like right over there it's like globalism and like stuff coming in from China.
Yeah, it is
So, like,
crazy.
in like 10,000 years they'll be like, what the heck is going on? There's like an insect from China, and then
Yeah, right.
We'll be able to
right.
see it.
yeah,
And we're doing it in the midst of all these dynamite bunkers.
right,
As well.
yeah.
The one thing, that is crazy because this is like the last time period
TNT, sorry.
before global trade in North America, right? When the French come in, then the Native Americans become part of a global trade network.
Oh, wow.
You think about it that way. That does, as when you mention that, yeah, that's really interesting. So we're keeping a sharp eye out for any kind of a possible French trade good.
Okay.
Because that would be, like the late 1600s, early 1700s really is when global trade first comes in here.
Because there had to have been settled. I mean, groups living here in like the 16 and 17 and
Yeah.
1800s.
Right, yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
European groups? Yeah.
Or Native American.
So we definitely have Native Americans here.
Definitely.
Okay.
And that's what we're digging. And then we're looking to see if you're seeing the arrival of some French traders or down the line trade. So they might be up in, you have them in Green Bay in what, like 1634.
I don't know the dates. I can't remember the dates.
I think it's 1634-ish. And then, so you might see some of those trade goods trickling down, like through, trading between Native American communities.
Okay.
So people might get French trade goods and never actually have seen a French person.
Okay. Wow.
They knew about them and knew they were in the area probably somewhere. But
So I know like Joliet, obviously that's named after Lewis and
Yeah.
right.
like that whole thing. So
Yeah.
So that's around 1673 here. So this site's
That's later.
definitely before.
okay,
Before
that.
Joliet
Yeah.
came through.
okay.
But this is actually a broken hammerstone. That it was round, probably almost like a hockey puck shaped. And you can see on the edge how it's really shiny here, but it's dull here. It's dull because it's been used to hammer stuff, batter stuff.
Oh, wow.
And probably something like this would be used for making stone tools, for flaking stone. Yeah, so it's got that kind of battering mark on it. So it's definitely a tool, but it looks like they threw it in the fire and then it cracked and then they threw it out. So
Wow. So that's how it ended up in the pit.
yeah,
maybe.
it ended up a pit, broken hammerstone, past its usefulness. That was an interesting find.
Yeah.
Because if you look at this soil out here,
Like I would pick that up and be like, oh, let's skip it.
Right.
but that's the kind of thing. I mean, if you're working out
smooth
here
edge.
for a couple of weeks, you start to realize that there's another big piece of fire-cracked rock. Almost all the rock out here is like culturally modified. It's not just natural rock.
Okay.
So they're bringing it in or doing stuff to it or collecting it. It's very interesting.
Look for that.
So would there? You said this was. You're thinking that based on your research, this might have been like a summer, temporary village.
Yeah, like temporary village or temporary camp.
Okay.
Maybe not a full village, but maybe 5-6 families staying here in the summer from maybe that's a guess on the size, but maybe staying here from early summer to maybe September at most. Because if you're here in the early spring, they would be getting waterfowl.
Okay.
Right, because that's a waterfowl migration. If they're here late mid-fall, there'd be waterfowl coming back through. I haven't seen many bird boats. It's mainly just fish and stuff. So I think they were here probably, maybe, May to September, sometime in that range. But once we identify what kind of plant remains we're finding, maybe we're taking samples of the soil and we're going to put them in water and do what's called flotation. That'll make the seeds float up, and we can collect them and we can identify them and see when the plants would be ripening up and producing. So that'll give us a better, more tighter timeline on the annual use.
We're also taking pollen samples, which will give us a sense of the plants that are flowering at the time.
Wow. How do you take pollen samples
So right now, for example, you have plants that are blooming and they bloom at a particular time of year. And it all goes up into the air and mixes up and rains down and falls on the soil. And then, so right now, these units are all getting pollen in them from the air. And then when they close it up, then it's, you don't see it anymore. Less is coming in. So as, we go down, if we have a good context, we can pull out some dirt and use different kinds of acids to melt down the soil. And then what's left is actually the pollen from the time period when the pits were open or alternatively stuff that's been dumped in. So we might I'm sure we'll find a lot of oak pollen. So if they were using oak firewood and collecting it at when it has flowers on it, we would see that. Or if it is in the fall, I don't know if anyone has a ragweed allergy, but we see a lot of ragweed pollen. Ragweed pollen preserves really well, so if they're here in the fall, we'd probably get a lot of that in the unit.
And so if this was a group of 4 or 5 families, would you expect that there'd be groupings of that every 2 miles in this sort of environment where we have so many rivers and we have a lot of animals and fish? Would you expect this?
Probably less than that. More than that. A bigger space between
them.
I don't know. Don't have an actual number for it, but the Midwest was pretty sparsely populated.
Okay.
At that time period. So there might be 100 people living in a county.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's super. It's wild to think how isolated,
Yeah, it is wild. Maybe more than 100, but I don't know.
Yeah.
You think so?
County?
A county, maybe more, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe a few hundred.
Yeah. But what's interesting too is despite or maybe because of the small numbers, how many connections are between these communities as well.
Yeah,
So
right.
you have tons of connections between people. And like, for example, with the chert that we're finding, we're seeing chert from lots of different parts of Illinois.
Chert is the material they made their stone tools out of.
Okay.
So we're seeing, they're getting stuff from different parts of Illinois and even from down by St. Louis, where that probably came up the Illinois River and into the Kankakee and Des Plaines and up to here. So you have a direct trade route.
So it's kind of like chert is something you can heat and create metal, or
Well, no, you can. They had stone tools. So chert is something you can flake and
Okay.
sharpen up. It's a
Oh,
really
okay.
fine-grained rock that
Okay.
you can make a sharp edge on.
okay.
Yeah.
So they would make arrowheads and knives and things like that.
Wow.
When they did the earlier phase 2 work, they also found some copper in here.
Oh.
And I think Daniel found some, might be more hematite. They found a piece of hematite. We had that confirming the whole collections out down to the Illinois State Museum. It was hematite. So that's not here. So that's downstate. Copper's not even within the state. The nearest place is Copper Mountain, Wisconsin, I think.
Probably, yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff going on for a little isolated village without train service or wheels or horses.